Sound check. You're able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us in this edition of our webinar of the CFO board. As you have seen, we've been focusing on some of the critical and urgent issues around the post-COVID world. And based on the feedback from all of you and the larger financial community and our board members, we felt that there needs to be a deeper dive into some of the technological issues that are facing, and especially the focus on cybersecurity. So today's session will be chaired by Rekha Taluri, and we will have chats and discussion and presentations by Jay Simwal as well as Akhilesh Tuteja. So without much ado, I'm going to hand over to Rekha, who's the chair of the session, to begin the proceedings. Over to you, Rekha.
Thank you, Pranjal. Good morning, everyone. I hope all of you are keeping safe. So as Pranjal said, we will be continuing our session on digitization, and today's session will be specifically focused on cybersecurity. Just to set the context, as we have seen and heard from the World Economic Forum and all, the economic impact of the digital shutdown could be almost of the same magnitude or even greater than what we are seeing today from COVID, right? And our new normal, as we think about this, is not just, I just want to see if there's any echo you're hearing, or am I audible?
It's fine, Rekha, please continue. And,
okay.
And also for everybody's reference, we are recording this session, so the recording would be available later.
Yeah. So the economic impact of this could be much, much larger than what we are seeing just from COVID, right? And our new normal is not just COVID, but it could be COVID-like incidents that can create any kind of challenges with cyber, and it could be cyber pandemic, and it's also about time to start thinking about it. Was actually not today, but almost yesterday, right? And as the research says that most of us probably uncover any kind of cyber attacks sometime between 12 to 18 months after the attack actually happens. And the cost of to execute a cyber attack today is super cheap when compared to the cost of recovering and recovering from a security breach. And the loss coming from this is, in general, it's a huge loss to the brand and trust, and a huge business disruption, right? And as organizations have been experienced a lot of boards have actually acknowledged this as a huge business risk. And and more organizations are taking a strategic approach to this, being a lot more proactive in terms of how they are actually handling this rather than a reactive approach, right? In the recent past, what we have seen is that at least, even from an India perspective, we have seen more and more people who are getting hacked. They are being hacked on the COVID, with the theme of COVID, right? We have seen at least 9,000 odd coronavirus themed attacks just between Feb to May timeframe, and this is based on some of the threat intelligence reports that we are seeing, and across the globe. And this is not just India, right? This now 9,000 is India, and across the globe we are seeing 100,000 plus number of ransomware attacks which are COVID themed. And as you think about this, a lot of companies are also taking a three-pronged approach to it. One is security, compliance, and then how they think about identity, right? Security is more in terms of, how we are thinking about, more and more companies are also adopting this journey of zero trust approach, where they are thinking about every access, whenever people are accessing data or information, it has to be fully authenticated, because it's almost like, zero trust approach is we never trust, but we always authenticate and verify, right? And this should be the mantra with which we go towards, not just coping the current situation, but even when we are approaching it from a long-term perspective. The second part of it is also compliance, in terms of, how, as businesses are now taking a hybrid approach of working from home and working from office, and you have a distributed network where you need to think about how do we need to think about privacy, data privacy, security, and also how we approach data and incidents response, and the ability of the businesses to handle some of the data issues when users connect both from corporate as well as personal devices. It's more in terms of how are we being compliant with some of the regulations, and how we are treating these things. And the last one is in terms of identity. When you have multiple users trying to access the data, how do you authenticate? And sometimes what happens is we are also operating in siloed, distributed and siloed connections across, right? Even within the organization, not everything is fully connected. So how do we protect when to make sure that people, the authentication of the your own employees, you are checking with a master list, it could be an active directory or something where everything is authenticated. And we will hear more in terms of this, the different approaches the organizations are taking, as well as what we are seeing from a market trend perspective from both Jay and Akhilesh in the next couple of next hour or so. With that, I would like to hand over to Jay to take it over from here.
Hey, thank you, Rekha. Sound check. Are you able to hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Hey, hello everyone. To Rekha's point earlier, I hope all of you are safe and well. And when we are talking about safety today, I think it's not only the physical safety that we are worried about due to this pandemic, but also a very, very important aspect of it, to Rekha's point, the entire concept of virtual safety. How do we ensure that we are virtually safe? Because the amount of virtualization that we are going through right now is humongous. I think this call is a perfect example. In pre-COVID-19 situation, hopefully we all would have met face to face. This would have been a closed room conversation. We would have been pretty confident about safety and security of what we are talking about. Right now, we are having this meeting of a Microsoft team. Though Rekha is there, I would say that Microsoft is very robust in security, but it's still a virtual environment, right? So I think that entire thing changes the game. And when I was thinking about this entire concept of security, and I remember my early days when I was made the finance manager of one of the business unit. We were setting up a new business unit, and I was working with my IT counterpart, and we were looking at setting up a server. So we came up with an innovative idea. We said, he told me, Jay, we are going to have server in a glass room so that we can see it. Because before that, most of the companies would have their servers in a closed room which we can't see. He said, yeah, we will have server in a totally glass environment. We can see our server. We'll feel safe about it. And when I compare that vis-a-vis where we are today, God knows where our servers are, right? Our servers can be on-premise, our servers can be cloud, they can be anywhere. So I think that entire thing again changes the game further. And then when I look at those days, we were only in a mostly a desktop environment. Laptops were not that prevalent. So we knew that employee is going to work on a machine provided by us, which is a very secure desktop. So as long as we have a very, very strong firewall, which protects my server and which protect my desktop, I'm good. I can have a good, peaceful sleep. Look at today. I think there was a research that I was reading. I think the number of electronic devices that we have got today is close to 11 billion. The number of people on planet Earth is 7 billion. So that is the kind of penetration we have got. And now we have people connecting to our network from all sorts of devices. Those devices have got all sorts of application. Look at a very simple mobile phone. The number of applications we download in our mobile phone, the moment we download one application, we increase that threat level from an organization perspective. So I think when the other thing which comes to my mind is I remember in those days, it was early, maybe late 90s, there was an article, there was a data theft, and the number of records which were stolen was 100K. And it was a huge article. Today, millions of records may be stolen, and that was that those days, these events used to happen once in a year kind of a scenario. Now it is happening almost daily. So I think some of the data that we'll see on this chart here is a reflection of that. If you really look at the scenario, some of the data is from 2018, some of the data is from 2019. And what I was reading, there was a good article in CRN, and that's when I took this tagline from. There has been a 200% increase in cybercrime in the last 2 months. I think Rekha also spoke about it. Post COVID-19, the entire spectrum of cybercrime industry is only on the upward trend. So I think these facts are glaring. They kind of reflect on us. They kind of tell us that as business CFOs, I'm sure all of us are already aware of it because we are living in a very, very advanced technological environment. But trust me, the same advancement in technology is having on the cyber crime side also. It is, I think 20 years back, it may have been done by a few cyber geeks here and there. Today, it is a very, very well structured industry. I'm told, or I read a research, it is a $1 trillion industry opportunity. So the motivation people have in this area is today is humongous. And with that, increases the threat levels. So if I really look at we CFOs, what are we worried about? I think we are worried about first and foremost all our fiduciary responsibility. I think all of us are responsible depending upon whichever jurisdiction we are responsible for, be it Indian GAAP, US GAAP, IFRS, ensuring that our reporting is absolutely accurate. I would not use the word accurate, trust and fair. Ensuring that data is trustworthy. I think that is our first and foremost fear. And then I think me and Rekha were talking on a prep call earlier. As CFOs, I think we are worried about almost every asset in the company. It's not only the financial asset that may be in our direct control, but everything, but anything that is there in the company ultimately touches company's balance sheet, P&L, and cash flow. And any risk there is a direct risk to us. So and in fact, what we were talking, that some of the risks on the operational area are higher than the financial area, because financial area, at least we have a visibility. Operations tend to be pretty vast depending upon the kind of company that we all serve, right? I think in this group, we have got CFOs from varied kind of some of these brick and mortar company, the kind of spectrum that you have got from a physical exposure perspective is huge, massive. So asset management definitely is the another focus area for us from a CFO perspective. And then the entire concept of data. Now it is called that data is the new currency. So I think as secure your data, so secure you feel from a company perspective. Data breaches. How secure is our data? How secure is the environment in which we are playing with our data? And data is exploding. The exposure that data has got today, I was alluding to that earlier, is maybe multi-folded risk than it was in some 20 years back, because everybody is connected to that data through edge. And edge can touch anything. It mobile, it can be iPad, then it can be any kind of connectivity that people may adopt to use. And the last part of this entire CFO focus, and these are high level thoughts that I have got at this point of time, the entire concept of fraud. I think the people's opportunity and motivation to fraud also has multifolded, because the making a fraud now because of technology may be way easier than what it would have been some time back in past. So if you really look at all these focus areas, if you really look at the risk that we all are running at this point of time, and that this risk is increasing almost every day, then I think the entire concept comes to our mind is what kind of threats are we talking about, right? And I think this chart that I'm showing is only few examples. I think this is not a comprehensive chart, because the comprehensiveness of cybersecurity at this point of time is so real time. If everybody say that I have got a comprehensive list, I will doubt that. So these are just few examples that I put together. And when I'm reflecting on it, I'm feeling that the threats can be from two perspectives, right? We can have an internal threat. which can be from our employees, from our internal systems. I already spoke about certain aspects of collusion and fraud. But then today, the amount of external threat that we have got is very, very, very high. I think there are few examples by virtue of which anybody who has got the intention of playing around with our security, our cyber security, and play around with it, can be as simple as, we all know viruses, right? They're nothing but malware. It's as simple as malware, or as advanced as that is called being called advanced persistent threat. Also, let's say nation state. So today there are sponsored. I think cybercrime is a sponsored industry. You would have been reading. You would sometime read in the paper that some foreign state attacked a government website, and their motivation was very different. I think motivation today are not only money. Motivation today is not only cash. Motivation can be money. Motivation can be political. Motivation can be religion, and then that it becomes even the risk becomes even higher. And when we really look at these threats, I think what these threats primarily are trying to do at a very, very high level, they will either look at denying the service, means we are trying to access a particular file. You will be, I think, around a year and a half back, we have this ransomware where this ransomware attacked a specific set of files and you are not able to access it, and you have to pay certain Bitcoin to really come out of that entire ransomware threat. It can be an theft of, Rekha alluded to that, identity theft, personal information theft. I think in today's world, when personal information privacy is gaining so much of a momentum, that risk has again multifolded vis-a-vis some of the prior period. Espionage. I think lots of people are using this to spy around the world. And espionage is not only about, I would say, government. There can be industrial espionage that we all should be aware of. We should all be worried about, and we should all prepare for. And also, this also have whole lot of access requirement. Now, system and network access can be for purely monetary gain. They can be there to access the confidential information. They can be there to just to bring your network down. Sometimes that is also some of the strategies some of the threat players are playing in the market. So if you see, I think these are few examples. And what always worries me, the threats are evolving. I'm sure in some nook and corner of the world, somebody is doing something, developing something which is very new, which we do not yet know, which we do not yet understand. So in this entire mechanism, the speed with which we can react and the speed with which we can really proact is going to determine how strong would be our defensive mechanism vis-a-vis any cybersecurity threat. I think if you ask me anything which is there in the today's environment, speed is the key, and speed of response is the key. I think while we can have all these defensive measures, I have given again, no, it's not a comprehensive list. I have given a list of few measures there, not very comprehensive. But we can either look at a antivirus. I think antivirus, anti-malware, backup, everybody has it. Most of the IT systems automatically comes with that, and then companies are already today aware of it. They do that. We can look at installing. I already gave a firewall example. We can also look at some of the advanced intrusion detection and intrusion prevention systems. I think multi-factor authentication also is gaining a lot of ground with a combination of the laptop and mobile being hand in hand. Multi-factor authentication can be very easily applied and gives an additional layer of security, encryption, ensuring that how do you protect your assets, your data. People are already doing, also looking at doing whole lot of testing. How can you go deep and deep into your organizational virtual asset, or even for that matter physical asset, because a whole lot of networking gears, whole lot of storage gears that we have got in the organization are not virtual, they are physical. So how do you really go deep and are able to test it out to get that confidence and comfort that my cybersecurity is intact, that I am good, I am in control. I think one thing that I'm going to talk about a little bit more is the entire concept of security information and event management system. There are lots of industry leading companies. They come up with this entire concept is the concept of coming up with that end-to-end spectrum of monitoring your threat level, looking at your threat demography, and then kind of suggesting or implementing the protective measures vis-a-vis those the kind of threat that your organization may foresee is foreseeing now or may foresee in future. We'll talk a bit about that in a while. But last point that I wanted to emphasize, which has been my personal experience also, I think most important thing from a cybersecurity program perspective is our employees. Can we ensure that each and every employee take ownership? If each and every employee can take ownership of the data that he and she creates, stores, play with, if each and every employee can take ownership of the company asset that particular employee may be utilizing, using, I think our capability, our robustness of the entire cyber security program increases multi-fold. So employee training, employee awareness becomes a very, very key measure of success as far as our defensive measures against cybersecurity goes, because that is the front line of this entire threat. If we have good controls there, if we have got good mechanism there, if you have got good level of awareness there, if you have got good level of ownership there, it has been observed, it has been proven by research that the threat levels they come down significantly. I was talking about security information and event management system. I think lots of companies are coming up with this entire mechanism of gamut of solutions, gamut of products, which they offer to their customers, and then they take care of. They pretty much start from the perspective of monitoring the security threat, identifying the kind of threat that it is, the solution for that, and then ultimately implementing that particular solution. So Gartner, Gartner keeps on doing this study on various kind of industries. They did a study on cybersecurity, primarily in the area of security information and event management system, where some of these big players play around. So this chart is I think it's a February 2020 version. So you see that there are lots of companies who are already leading in this market. Lots of companies have got very, very niche solution. They primarily look at very, very specific product and customer segment. So we do have solutions. We do have products in the market. We do have companies investing a lot into this particular area. But I personally feel that the investment in security post COVID-19 is going to be way more than what it was pre-COVID-19, because all of us are realizing that post COVID-19 world is going to be maybe 10 or 15, 20 times virtual. And with that entire virtualization, with that entire dependency, further dependency on technology, the cybersecurity threat will only increase. So I am sure many other, for example, Microsoft is doing a great work. I think in this Gartner Magic Quadrant, Microsoft was mentioned. It is not there in this chart. I'm sure next year it will come. They're investing a lot. Same thing Alphabet is doing. These companies are investing a lot into this entire spectrum of security threat and coming out with products, coming out with solutions. That is on the software side. I belong to a hardware company. So we also are realizing that. We also are seeing this. We also are, whenever we are talking to our customer, I think security tends to be everybody's first priority at this point of time. So we also keep on coming up with this entire concept of embedded software. Many of you would know that while you have a pure play software, there are a whole lot of, because of the technology advancement, we do have the opportunity to embed software into a hardware. So for a very good, very simple example for HPE is we have developed with something we call Silicon Root of Trust. It is nothing but an embedded software which goes with our, let's say we are selling a server. So with our server, sometimes we give this example, pretty much a fingerprint. So it is a fingerprint embedded in that particular machine. Anybody who tries to play around with that, you automatically get a alert, and based on that alert, you can take a response. I think lots of things are happening on the software side, lots of things are happening on the hardware side, but I personally believe that this is something that we all will have to watch out for. And I think as CFOs of our respective organizations, this is something which if we are not up to date, we may want to be as much up to date as possible. We may want to review our cybersecurity budgets. Are we spending enough in that particular area? Are we making any kind of compromise? Because if we have to make any business compromise, this is not the right area and this is not the right time for this kind of a compromise. Also, wanted to quickly touch upon this. Rekha spoke about the entire concept of controls, right? As CFOs of our respective organization, one more thing that we are directly accountable for is the overall control in the environment. They can be financial control, they can be some of the operational control. So a committee of sponsoring organization of the Treadway Commission, it's a US-based committee. It's a committee of top 5 accounting firm. One of them is IMA. I'm also part of IMA as my honorary job. they have come up with this. It's a mechanism. It's a framework where you look at your entire risk, and primarily cyber risk is always at the top from 5 perspectives. What kind of control environment do you have? Are we able to assess the risk from the perspective of identifying the risk and then understanding what kind of risk that do we have, what kind of control, and sometimes we identify a risk, we may end up accepting it because we realize that okay, the risk is not that big a threat to my organization. I just accept it because any risk mitigation strategy in the end cost. So to Rekha's point earlier, today cost of cyber crime is very cheap. Doing a threat, doing a cyber intrusion is very cheap, but cost of recovering is very high. So sometimes we got to do those cost benefit trade off. What kind of control activities, be it operational control, be it financial control, other internal control that we have got within our organization, which kind of protects us from that entire threat from a cybersecurity perspective. I spoke about this. What is our information and communication mechanism? Are we able to ensure that each and every employee in the organization is aware at least? And if those people can really own it, if we are able to communicate properly, I think threat level comes down drastically. And I think last but not the least, monitoring activity. The monitoring can be physical controls. Many a time monitoring now are more automated controls. We do have the, I spoke about that in my previous slide. We do have tools, we do have softwares which can be embedded into your assets and they can monitor any kind of threat that may come from a cyber perspective. So just wanted to kind of introduce this concept to you all. Anyway, today's meeting is more about we introducing the concept, and if I think if there is a more interest, we can come out with more sessions and talk more about this because it's a very deep and evolving subject. So I think we, depending upon the interest level, we can always talk more. Finally, what I wanted to share with you all, in the end, I personally believe that what we are going to do to take care of this entire cybersecurity threat may end up being same old methods, but we'll have to apply new lenses. So if you see from an industry best practice perspective, you have to look at this entire thing from three broad aspects of people, process, and technology. On the people side, if we have a board level sponsorship, then we have realized that the capability of an organization to withstand these threats becomes very high. You get, because the ownership then percolates down. I spoke about that employee level ownership. So if you have a board level sponsorship that percolates down, it becomes an employee level ownership. Then you end up building that culture. You end up embedding cybersecurity into your culture. And if you do that, I think that's a massive success. The last part of people at this point of time is cybersecurity expert. I think cybersecurity is a very evolving field. Getting cybersecurity expert all the time from the market is not becoming very feasible. So companies like ours are also investing a lot in developing internal talent, training them, coaching them, exposing them, so that they gain that expertise from a cybersecurity perspective. Because developing that expertise also would be so very essential just because of the fact that innovation in cybercrime is very high. Every second, every minute, new threat may be developing, and we need to have people and expertise being able to first understand those threats and being able to devise solutions, either to mitigate those threats or even if we get exposed, how do you really look at a recovery? I think if cyber security can be, from a process perspective, can be aligned to business strategy, board level sponsorship, alignment of cyber security to business strategy, that would be a big plus for an organization to improve and increase their cyber resilience. And with that, Rekha spoke about that in her introductory talk, strong access management. How do we ensure that the access that we need to provide to anybody is a need-based access, is a tightly controlled access, and is a tightly monitored access? And the last thing from a technology perspective is lots of emerging technologies are coming. I think the speed of automation and artificial intelligence is being used heavily into this particular area also. But with artificial intelligence also come another challenge. I think we generally talk about that as algorithmic bias. I think Satya Nadella spoke about it when he was here in India. I think he fears that for artificial intelligence, the biggest threat that we have got is the bias. While with human, we do understand human biases. I don't think we still don't have that capability to understand machine bias. So I think that is the another thing we got to watch out for. When you apply the lenses through all this entire concept of people, process, technology, in the end, the objective would be to be able to come up with a comprehensive crisis management plan, because at some point of time we may get hit, but once we get hit, what do we have a very robust cyber resilience plan? Do we have a capability to really protect, detect and manage? And most importantly, when we are hit, do we have well defined and communicated policies? How do we react to that? How do we recover? I think the speed of our recovery also becomes very important in that kind of a scenario. So these are some of the high level thoughts that I thought I'll share with you all today. It's a short talk. We have little time, so we thought we'll just introduce the topic to you all. I'll pause here and open it up for any questions, comments, feedback any one of you may have. Thank you so much.
Jay, thank you so much. Thank you for a great discussion. Just to summarize a couple of things that you touched upon, the multi-factor authentication, and then I think you also mentioned a lot in terms of employee training, which is very vital, the COSO framework, and most importantly, the PPT framework in terms of people, process, and technology, having that board level sponsorship, access level management, and how we continue to leverage automation and tech innovation. I think those are fantastic points that you made. Thank you for sharing those thoughts.
Sure, thank
I
you.
think we have a few questions online. One from Trisha. Some companies are having self-isolation networks when the systems sense a threat. Can this be a valid security measure?
Yeah, so I think, see, I give a COVID-19 example. So I think we understand self-isolation way better now because of this pandemic. I think in any kind of threat situation, self-isolation definitely can be very effective. The only challenge with self-isolation is that limits our business activity. I think I'll give a very parallel example with COVID-19, right? We had lockdown, we still continue to have lockdown, but they are very effective, but they have got a binary impact because of the overall business impact. Let me take an example of Amazon. Can Amazon ever think of self-isolating? Perhaps not. The moment they think of self-isolating, I think their entire business will go for toss. I think it also depends upon the kind of industry you are. In certain kind of industry where your dependence on data, where your customers are not that real-time connected with you, maybe self-isolation can work. But in some of the other industries, like Amazon is an example, banking is another example. People need their banking system to be up all the time, and that more so in today's world of total virtualization. I don't have any cash with me today because of COVID-19. The only way I can pay is through these various online mechanisms. So if I do not have that connectivity because of isolation, then as a customer I'll suffer. So I think while it can be very effective, but I think it will have a business impact, and it will depend from industry to industry from my perspective. Rekha, if you would want to add anything there, I'm sure you would have tremendous example from Microsoft perspective.
I think Akhilesh also had a point. Akhilesh, would you like to add on this one? I saw your message as well.
I think Jay has covered very well, so I think I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah. If anyone has any questions, you can use the hand feature. Jay, maybe, as we get more questions, I can probably ask a question or two. One is in terms of, as CFOs are thinking through this journey, how do you suggest, they go about it? Because a lot of them are starting to realize the importance of this. And is there a suggestion that you would have for them as they start thinking about what's the role that they can play? Because it's not just a IT risk we're talking about, it's a overall business risk, right? How do you think, you would suggest them to approach it?
Yes, in fact, I was reading a research. They are already looking at future CFOs as CFOs plus CIOs. I think what everybody feels that a finance leader in the organization, anyway, I think two guys are responsible for a company. All of us know, a CEO and CFO. The kind of stake a CFO has on the ground any kind of IT risk becomes his direct accountability. In some of the organization, it's already happening. Their IT organization now report into CFO organizations. So I think that is the kind of expectation they are setting from an organizational framework perspective also. But anybody who is beginning the journey now, my thinking is you may want to look at the most advanced technology, because I always give this mobile example. If I have to buy a mobile in the market today, I'm not going to buy Nokia 3310. I'm going to buy the most advanced Apple or Samsung phone, which comes with all kind of features. So I think first and foremost, you may have to understand your risk, cyber risk level, because it varies from industry to industry, the kind of work that you do, and basis that risk, you may want to then come up with, I would say, go with the expert. We have got Akhilesh here. KPMG has got tremendous amount of expertise. I also spoke to them a lot on this entire risk framework, and try to find the best in the market today. You don't have to. The advantage of anybody starting late is you have the entire greenfield in front of us. For somebody like us who have started maybe 15 years back, we have got certain investment already in this particular field. So sometimes backing off from that investment becomes a little tricky. But if you are totally new, I think you have got all the flexibility. So my thinking, my suggestion is identify your risk well, and then identify the right tool, which should be maybe the most advanced tools which you can afford from a budget perspective.
Any questions from anyone?
So I think we can request Akhilesh to start, Rekha, and then come back to more.
Hey, thank you everyone. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Rekha.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jay. We'll come back to you with more questions.
Sure, absolutely.
Akhilesh, over to you.
That was a fascinating presentation by Jay. I must say that I'm super nervous, to say the least. One is because I wasn't expecting someone with a deep finance background and running the role of a CFO for so many years to be the one talking about technology in depth, and also, issues which are such varying nature, of going as deep as SIM and kind of going as broad on COSO framework. But I think I've got a bigger task to do now. The second reason I'm nervous is because most of the time consultants may not know everything, but they can dress up well. But Jay, you beat me on that one too today. So I feel definitely more nervous about my session today than I would have normally done. But I think you set a great foundation for us to go on. And I think this topic is so fascinating and something which is very, very close to my heart. So I would like to talk about the perspective which may be relevant in today's world way more than what they have been there before. So I have just shared my screen. Are you able to see, Rekha, just to kind of do a check?
Yes.
Are you seeing?
Very good.
Okay.
Very good.
Perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take you through some of the imperatives which I think are relevant in today's time. But before I actually go on and talk about what I think is important, I really wanted all of us to do a little bit of work. So if you're having access to your phone or PC, internet or something, I request you to give me some inputs. I have two simple questions. So the first one is, what do CFOs care for the most? And all you need to do is that on your phone or on your laptop, just type www.menti.com. It'll ask you for a 6-digit code, which is 692096. I just want to kind of get the perspective of what you think. Many of you actually do it for a living, but some of you may be actually doing even more bigger jobs. So I just need your views. You can pick any two. I've given you a few choices. I'm sure there might be things which I haven't given you and you may like to do, but these are some of these 9 parameters which I picked up from some research. So, okay, I've got some responses. So one person has responded. So it's internal control, regulation, risk. Okay, we see growth strategy taking, wow, okay, that's good. Fraud. Okay, you got to choose the most. So don't pick up what you think is the most. So I'm actually a little bit concerned if there's lack of consistency in this group's thinking. Okay, I think growth is beating up. So we got about 11 responses, growth, regulation, and then several factors kind of taking a 3 spot. Good. I actually like that not many people are picking process optimization or market capitalization, because that's like hopefully the outcome. what you do. So growth is, we got about 14 responses. I think we've got about maybe 30 plus people in the room. So
yeah, we have 39 on the call, so maybe we give
I'm
them
sure
some more time.
But maybe many of them might be doing multitasking. I do that all the time. So I think I'll close in a few seconds because I think directionally we are getting right. So growth strategy, cash management, risk management, performance, internal controls, regulation. So I think this good news that many aspects, but as I said that I'm a little bit surprised that there is a huge diversity in the thinking. I would have thought that maybe 2 or 3 factors emerge very strong, but actually growth, cash, and performance management are kicking. So with that, it's a good idea for me to see what do you care for the most, growth coming out very top. I have now the next question. So the next question is a little bit more difficult. Okay, good. We've got about 21 responses, cash and growth. Today's time, cash is important. The second question, a little bit difficult. I've not given you any choice. So you just need to write one word. What do you think gets the most impacted due to cyber breach? Is it, is it cost? Is it regulation? Is it, so what you cared about is what you told me that you care about the growth, you care about cash. But what do you think is the biggest factor which gets impacted due to a cyber attack? Any trust? Okay, lovely. Business continuity, business disruption, compliance, reputation. Okay, we got 7 keywords, interesting ones. So as you can see, trust is big. That means 2 people have written trust. Okay, we've got some more. So trust, reputation comes to the center stage now. Lovely, lovely. Okay, all right. Brand, information, business continuity. So things like vendor payment, compliance data have single responses, but trust and reputation coming very top. So I got 18. Last time we had 21. Maybe 3 more people walking along with us. If they can just put one word, that will give me a great idea. Okay, so while those couple of people respond, I really want to say that maybe I can end this session right now here and all of us can go home, because what I see from the initial reaction is that I'm talking to a highly evolved audience. So it is one of the things which I realize that, and as you will see in the few minutes we start to get into conversation, I think the way you have looked at cyber as a trust issue, as a reputation issue, as a business issue, is really the thing which I think I have a point of view on for most years. So what I would do is, so thank you so much for playing along. I think now onwards, you can relax and I will do the work. I just want to take you through a short journey, and I know we are talking about here Microsoft Teams, and I love Microsoft Teams, we use Microsoft Teams, but I just thought I'll tell you the story of Zoom, which is another of video conferencing system. And for those of you who compare MS Teams and Zoom, my request is that don't, because they're completely different tools. I think Microsoft Teams is a lot more collaboration, whereas Zoom is a video communication tool. Okay, so this is a topic which I want to talk about. As most of you would have seen that Zoom has been a company for many, many years. It's been around, doing okay. And in around January 2019 timeframe, Zoom started to see big upsurge. And the number of active subscribers, which Zoom used to have, which used to be, let's say, about 10 million-ish, started to become 200 million active connections somewhere around February or early March timeframe. And that's the time when, as the number of active users grow, number of downloads increase, number of concurrent session increase, as you know, digital companies tend to get valued more. So this is the chart which I put on for the Feb to July kind of top of how Zoom's market capitalization or the share stock value has played over time. What you will see, interestingly enough here, and this is the thing which I want to talk to you about, is that somewhere around in the month of March, I think it was somewhere around third week of March, there was a nice announcement by somebody, and it was not a company announcement, to say that Zoom actually has serious cybersecurity issues. And of course, some of you would have noticed that became a big market news. And interestingly, Zoom stock, which from December to March had grown up by almost 30%, took a significant beating for those few days, and it came down to almost 25%. And this was one of the big crises for a company which actually had started to see significant growth. They were investing big time. And of course, they were buying a lot of server space and many other things. And interestingly, the three vulnerabilities which was pointed out at that point in time, one was what's called now as Zoom bombing, which means that the URL was predictable, anybody could go it in, and there was some vulnerability about account takeover and others. Now, this kind of situation happens as what we call the crisis in the life of a company, where suddenly you start to see a big issue about a company's core capability. But what Zoom did at that point in time, in my view, was fascinating. Even though they saw that this was a big issue which was coming up for their particular product, honestly, as a cybersecurity expert, I would say, was that issue, those three issues were identified, were they life critical? Possibly the answer is no. And I've seen many of my other clients, by the way, Zoom is not my client, so let me just kind of disclose that. Many of my clients actually take a very panicked view of the events at that point in time. And they typically sometimes go on denial or they find belittle the issue. But what I think Zoom did, which I really like about, is that they acknowledge the issue. And once they acknowledged the issue, they said they'll fix it. And in less than 2 weeks' time, they actually fixed two of those three big issues, and then they fixed the third one issue also. And interestingly, if you see, the market reacted very positively. The market reacted positively to a company's reaction to how do they deal with cyber issues. And now, as you can see, the rest of the history, the Zoom stock is still doing very well. And if you see in that 3-week period, Zoom stock actually came down and it went back up again. I've seen another situation of other companies which have actually dealt with such a cyber issues in a very different manner and have actually ended up nosediving the stock for a very long time. So the key message that we want to talk about here, and of course we can talk about a lot of other things, but cyber is a big business issue in today's time. And now, of course, we're talking about Zoom. Their entire thing depends on digital. But even for companies which use digital as a channel, but physical is their way of doing things, in today's time, the customers really care about cybersecurity as a business driver. And we did a research in 2019 wherein we tried to understand this thing, what does buy customer loyalty? We call that report the Consumer Loss Barometer. We studied about 2,000 enterprises, and globally we came out with a great hypothesis, which I'm very happy about, which basically says that people are more willing to switch brands because they think that the company they're working with is less secure than they are willing to switch brands for marketing and other reasons. And this research was not done for digital companies. This research was done for 9 sectors, including automobile, retail, telecom, etc., etc. So the point I'm trying to make here is that cyber in today's world is a significant trust factor. And thank you so much for acknowledging that through your responses. This is another research which we do. We call the Global CEO Outlook Survey. We study about anywhere between 1,300 to now 2,200 CEOs every year. So the last report was published in 2019. And we asked those CEOs saying, what are your top 5 priorities? And you'll find, interestingly, from 2016 to 2019, a lot of priorities have changed. The only 2 things which have remained constant in last 4 years is emerging tech and, interestingly, cybersecurity. Every other thing has had a short-term factor. These are not the top 5 issues. These are top 5 priorities. So the CEOs really care about making sure that cybersecurity is right. And why do CEOs globally care about cybersecurity? It is not about trying to minimize the risk. The classical view of cybersecurity was that I should take care of it because if I don't do it, I'll have a regulatory issue. I should deal with cybersecurity because if I don't deal with it, I'll have a penalty or I'll lose. So the entire cyber strategy 5 years ago was based on risk minimization, loss minimization strategy. But in today's time, if you look at it, about 71% of those CEOs which we surveyed in 2019 said that they see cyber as an opportunity to find new revenue stream and innovate rather than just as an overhead cost. And interestingly, about 60% of the CEOs say that it allows them to build greater trust amongst external stakeholders and customers, and therefore it is a top 3 priority for their organization. So why I'm talking about this is very important because many times cybersecurity is looked at as a lens of a risk driver. It of course is a risk driver, but this is a risk driver which is so closely associated with the brand, the reputation, the trust which you drive, and therefore the point I want to make is that many times, and this is not the case anymore, but many times I've seen cybersecurity has been left as a subject to the CIO. In my view, that is possibly not the right thing to do in today's time, because technology is not the only thing which can control cyber. Technology is not the only thing which gets impacted because of cyber. So cyber has become really the top level issue, and certainly for the CFOs. And therefore, I wanted to talk about in the next 20-25 minutes is less about what we can do to make sure that everything is secure. But I would really find success if at the end of my 25 minutes now, I'm able to talk about why should you get more involved and how easy is it for you to get involved in this and really drive this as a business enabler. I don't want to take names, but you would have seen that when you deal with different kinds of companies, let's say, for example, when you deal with a company which provides an automated email service, they don't necessarily make it very inconvenient for you to use it. In today's time, technology is all about building cyber with convenience. So the days are gone when cyber could be an overhead. In fact, we are now talking about cybersecurity as a big consumer experience driver. It is not about a risk driver. In fact, the worst thing which a company can do is to bolt on cybersecurity to make it so secure that it becomes almost inconvenient to use. So how do we use cybersecurity in a very innovative way so that it drives revenue than right now it's just driving the risk part of it. So to me, I really wanted to anchor, and thank you very much for giving me the feedback that you really care about cyber as a big trust driver. If your customers, if your employees, if your stakeholders believe that you have a good cybersecurity, I think you inherit good trust, and therefore you drive more revenue, and therefore you drive more profitability. So I really, really want to anchor that. Please don't leave cybersecurity to a chief security officer. Not that I have problem with them. Don't leave a cybersecurity CIO because I have problem with them. But I think if you don't elevate the issue of cybersecurity really to the top management, you are possibly not getting the right value what cyber can deliver. Of course, many times the risks that our dimension can get looked at. So if you see the consequences are reality. There are huge economic losses, there are huge reputational losses, there are huge operational losses, and there are several examples. I just picked up some of these things from public sources. As you can see, and Rekha talked about it well, Jay talked about it well, that there are huge things. In fact, just I wanted to highlight on the blue box. It says 72% of the consumers are not willing to do business if the company with the company if they see cybersecurity issue. This is a result of one of our research, and I've also kind of in the order of making it very general, I've picked up research from some of my other colleagues in the industry, and of course there are some. So clearly this is an area where you got to minimize losses, but more so maximize value. I just want to spend a minute on one of my favorite fraud topic, and this is called the Nigerian 419 fraud. I'm sure every person on this planet someday or the other has received an email which says that, I'm so and so from Nigeria, and my ancestors have left $200 million of money and all of that, and I really can't take it out because my government does not allow. But if I have a foreigner, someone like you who I really love, I don't know why, because I just found you on the internet, I would be very happy to transfer 50% of my fortune so that you and I share it. Now, I took this as a subject of my research, and I said that, why is this fraud not evolving while many other frauds are evolved? So actually, I go back, and this fraud dates back to 1920s. So as I speak about it, this is a 100-year-old fraud, which has actually not evolved at all. So if you look at the modus operandi, the way this entire fraud works, so this entire fraud has basically 4 stages, which means the first one is phishing, which is you send out a letter. In 1920s, they used to send snail mail to hundreds and thousands of people to say you send out a letter and you phish. So that's the stage 1. The second stage is somebody replies to that letter saying that, yes, I'm interested because I think I can be lucky. Today is my great day. I'm willing to accept a lottery. The third stage is when somebody provides a little bit of bank details. And the fourth stage is they say, okay, now we have authenticated your bank details. You need to transfer that $100 so that the account works very well. And first $100 comes from the account, and then you can put money in it, the account opening charges. So these are the 4 stages. These 4 stages have remained unchanged for the last 100 years. In fact, many other things about this fraud has remained unchanged for many years. So I actually started to do some research. I got hold of people who in the past conducted these kind of frauds, and I just looked at, and I asked them a question saying that, why is it that you haven't changed? Because, when I look at this email, I simply put this email on trash. I don't really. So why don't you make it even more attractive? Why can't you make me? And they after talking to several people, they actually said that, Akhilesh, while you think that we are hackers, but I can tell you we are business people. The only difference between the way you do business and we do business is we don't have a CFO. So we don't have somebody who's talking to us about regulation, compliance, and everything, but we've got everybody in our enterprise. So as much as you are interested in making money, we are interested in making money. And they have done their own business process mapping, and they figured out that a lot of people sometimes may be interested, but really the people fall when you have to transfer that $100. So it's easy to get people interested, but it is very hard for people to get that $100 out. So they said that we really don't want to deal with people who will finally not transfer that $100. So I have a CRM system where I track the conversion rate from how many emails I sent to how many responded to how many said yes and put the bank details and how many transferred the $100. And we have figured out that the conversion rate is really, really, really low. It is pathetically low. We really want to improve the conversion rate. And the way for us to do it is that we want to go after not the people who might just be explorers or interested. We really want to people who think that they are lucky and they are super greedy. So my job is to eliminate all the people who will fall off at some point. So my job is to tell you everything that I am a fraudster. It's written on my email that I'm a scamster. But despite you reading all that, you still want to do business with me because you think that you can get lucky and this could be a lottery day. And therefore, for the 100 years, we have not changed the fraud model. They have not even changed that this email comes from Nigeria because, this is the first sign. So effectively, the point I'm trying to make is that the criminals which you're dealing with, either the financial criminal or any other kind of criminal, because they have become very, very interested in the kind of money which you siphon off these days through other kind of cryptocurrency and other things. So they really are business people. So the point I'm trying to make is that we are not dealing with people who are just here for fun. That time is over. We are dealing with serious people who are financially motivated, and therefore they will go a long way and trap you and just not try these things. So this is my CFO's guidebook for what I call the cybersecurity ROI. And this I give as a guide, very important, because many times people who make investment internally are not able to decide that how much investment in cybersecurity is good enough. Okay, it's a very difficult question the CFOs typically have to answer. And why is it an important question? Because as you all familiar with the concept of risk management, saying that it is impossible to measure the cost of a risk which you have mitigated. Okay, let me just kind of Nassim Taleb, who wrote that book Black Swan, he actually talks about in his book as the thought experiment, and he says that if, for example, if you happen to be the guy who was responsible for civil aviation around the world, and a year before 9/11 happened, if you had the opportunity to take to the Civil Aviation Safety Board a proposal saying that let's make all the cockpit doors bulletproof, and imagine that whole thing would have costed $5 billion, and you're lucky that day and everybody approved that proposal and everybody put that $5 billion to put all the cockpit doors bulletproof, possibly 9/11 wouldn't have happened. Would you be able to track back to say that because we put 5 billion, we were able to reduce the risk of 9/11? You can't, because 9/11 wouldn't have happened. But today, because 9/11 happened, you can go back and say that maybe that investment of $5 billion in making all the cockpit doors bulletproof was worth it. So as a CFO, we always deal with the challenge saying that, how much is the value of protecting a risk when the risk cannot occur because that's already been mitigated. So this is a big dilemma which we face. So the way I've tried to solve this is I put this on a two axis. The one axis is the x-axis says that how much money an attacker will make from a fraud, and the x-axis saying that how much will it cost for them to do it. And anything which is on that red line, which you see the oblique red line going, is called the break-even line. So the job of an attacker is to try and stay below the red line, and the job of a company and a CFO or board member should be to stay above the line. The higher you are above the line, it's actually very expensive. As you can see that, if the cost of an attack is huge and the value is very low, the attacker goes to jail and, they really don't want it. So other mistakes, so the two mistakes happen, which typically when we look at the investment in cybersecurity, one is that sometimes we stay below the line. When you stay below the line, you will have an attack. But the other mistake I see people do is that they are way above the red line. The way above the red line is money wasted. Why do you need to over-engineer, and how do you need to really make, so really my suggestion is that the as close as red line above you can stay is your cyber strategy. Now it's easier said than done, but I can tell you, just to let me illustrate some of the things here. So right now in today's world, the CEO frauds. By the way, this is the term which is now called also the business email compromise. CEO fraud doesn't mean that the CEO committed fraud. It's basically an email which comes to a junior employee of the company saying that, as if it comes from a CEO, say that, we are doing a deal with this company. This is attorney privilege. Don't talk to anybody. Mr. CFO, please wire transfer $40 million. It has to be done today, otherwise you will lose the deal. And by the way, I'm on a 15-hour long flight to New York, so don't contact me. And trust me, how many people fall for that is unbelievable. So the cost of that attack today is insignificant, because how does it take to do it? You need to register a domain which sounds like this. So for example, just hypothetically speaking, Microsoft.com could be spelled with, instead of I, with M. So msmicrosoft.com will get you maybe about $20 on GoDaddy.com. You'll get that kind of domain name, and you could send that email. I'm sure, Rekha, you won't fall for it, even though it might come to you. But typically, those are the kind of cost to the attacker. Although now they've become smarter, so they don't send random emails. They also study the pattern of the CEO. They actually track you down on Facebook and others when you're checking into the airport, what your behavior, how you write it, and all of that. So they'll read your LinkedIn post. They can do your pattern analysis. So all of that has become very interesting machine learning capabilities in today's time. But it's still, the cost of launching that attack is very, very insignificant compared to if I were to pick up another one, which is, let's say, for example, doing a fraud on a chip and pin card. So as the EFT POS, which used to be the magnetic strip kind of fraud, become mainstream, people are now moved to chip and pin cards. As Swift attack became easier, now they moved to the secure Swift attack. Ransomware are still very easy, although the income is also very low. In ransomware, you get like 20, 30, 40 bitcoins, but the cost of ransomware is insignificant because you kind of go whole hog. And so the point I'm trying to make is that don't just look at cybersecurity as saying you've got to put the best firewall, best network, best this and all that. What is the scenario we are trying to protect, and how will that scenario come? And now I know, by the way, I say, Rekha, thank you very much. I know Outlook has many features, and if I have to do a bit of ad, go to a higher level of Office 365 or M365. If you really want the Azure infrastructure protection and many other Azure information protection and many other things, I don't get paid for doing that, but I think this is really it's a M365 makes life very easy, and it'll do a lot of phishing detection, all that. But what I always say that no AI can deal with the natural stupidity. So we do have people who typically fall for it. I know you can put some filters on things don't land, but when they land and how you do with it is interesting. So this is really my landing point to say that don't overinvest in cybersecurity and don't fall for the easy things. We talked a little bit about in the previous session about the employees is easy, and in fact Rekha and Jay both talked about it, and that it's a very important area to deal with employee education. I actually have a very contrarian view on that one. In my view, education is another waste of money, because and maybe in Q&A I'll pick that one. I'll leave the point here saying why education is a waste of money, so that it'll keep you thinking why I said that, and we'll come on to that in Q&A session. All right. So this is another thing which, so having given you the guide saying that you should do a good risk assessment and you should say how much it is, but let me tell you how bad we are doing this risk assessment. So this is again credit from a book called The Number That Killed Us. This is a book which got published a few years ago. And in this, Pablo argues, saying that if you looked at the expected credit loss models of the top 4 banks in US in 2007 and asked them, saying, what is the probability of they having the expected credit loss because the portfolio, Merrill Lynch at that point was valued at 730 million, which basically said that the maximum loss they can have is 730 million, 95% possibility. JP Morgan 1.62 billion, 99%. 2.1 to Goldman Sachs, and Citigroup 2.5 billion. So this is what their risk model told us. And I was just telling that I have a risk model. Now let me tell you what it actually happened. So what it really ended up happening, Citigroup didn't lose 2.5 billion. They're actually exposed to 102 billion. And so is Goldman Sachs, not 2.1, but it's 86 billion. So why is it happening to us? Why are we all think that we should be doing great risk assessment, and cyber is a risk topic. So if we can't do risk assessment on a topic which is directly quantifiable, which is the expected credit loss, how will we be able to do it for a cyber which is actually multi-dimensional? Because all of you said that it's not about somebody in expected credit loss, somebody not paying you money. It's like one dimensional. Here, somebody attacking your website, as Jay gave the examples in that, can Amazon afford to have isolated? The answer is no. If Amazon is out for 2 hours on $1 billion sale, it's done. So, and an attack and loss of information, regulatory, and the quantification of cyber attack is rather complex. By the way, I have done a methodology, and some of my colleagues have done it, and another topic for offline discussion. But our problem is that we, as a human species, are very poor in doing risk assessment because we rely a whole lot on past data. And past data tell us saying that, if this has happened in the past, it is likely to happen in future. And as we now know, and of course, COVID-19 is a great example that what happened yesterday is certainly not going to happen now. And what did not happen yesterday may happen today. So this whole concept of linearity is completely out of the window. So I really want to say that, there are a few of the other major challenges. So one is our inability to do the good risk assessment. But the other big challenge is that in the past, let me take you back. And again, let me take an example of my favorite, Microsoft. I love Microsoft, by the way. If let's say 15 years ago, I was running a Microsoft machine, and if a malware came, we didn't call them malware at that time, we called them viruses because they were differently capable. So if a virus came to my computer, the chances were that I got a blue screen dumped. The chances were that I got to know my files got deleted or some screen came up and all that. So the time it took between a virus infected me and I got to know about it is typically a few seconds, maybe a couple of minutes, and that's it. Because they were disconnected computers, the infection was to the machine. But in today's time, the viruses or the malware and all of that, they don't want to attack me because they want to use me. They want to attack me because they want to use me to attack somebody else. And this is the concept of using, zombies and other machines. So what they want to do. So when you are creating zombie, you don't want to tell the zombie saying that you're a zombie. You want to tell the zombie on the day when you are going to strike a war. So effectively, and this is not my study, but an external study from IBM, which says that in today's time, it takes on an average 197 days for you to know after you've been infected. So from 15 years ago, when I got to know by my blue screen dump in a minute, to now it takes me, so for 197 days, I might actually be infected and not know about it. And my entire concept, which works on saying that, I put firewalls. So I've isolated myself from attacks. But this is like saying, if you were given the in charge of a country to say that, you got to stop a country from attack or terrorist, as much as you put firewalls on your borders, you also put internals. You have homeland security. Why do you have homeland security? Because there's an assumption that terrorists are already infiltrated. That's the same thing in our world. Do not over-rely on external perimeter. That's the thing of past. People used to do it 5 years ago. It's a bad strategy. Today's strategy is to make sure that you have a border security force and you have a homeland security. Both of them have very different purposes today. That's one big challenge which we're dealing with. Second, which is, and I want to talk about it. This is my favorite topic, which is that, we as humans, and I'm not saying that this is true for CFOs, this is true for everybody. We as humans tend to be very overconfident about what we can do and what we believe we can do. And this is another thought experiment. So how many of you, and you don't need to respond, I'm not doing a Menti question here, but how many of you actually have recorded your sound, and like the way it's getting recorded now, my sound, and I'll play it back someday. I'll actually not do it because I feel that when I speak myself and I hear myself, I sound better than when I hear myself on a playback device. I'm sure many of you have gone through this thing saying that when you play back your own voice, it doesn't sound as good as you think your own voice is. And the reason for that is that when I'm hearing my own voice right now, I'm actually not hearing through my ears. I'm hearing it through my bones because it's the internal vibration of bones in my body. But when I actually hear my voice from a speaker, a playback device, I'm hearing my voice through my ears. And that's a really interesting beauty of the human body. The brain actually thinks that you're smarter than you actually are. By the way, if you stood in front of the mirror this morning and thought you could look great, you might actually look a little less great than what you think you do. So effectively, we also, most of our mechanism to protect ourselves are generally built on a mechanism to say that we can solve the problem. But actually, research has shown that we believe that we can solve the problem, but it's harder. So it takes on an average about 69 days to just contain a breach, not fully recover. And I talked about is that the risks are significantly outside. So one is that it's hard to do risk assessment. It's hard to know how much to spend. And then it is so difficult to quantify the cyber risk. And really, with the COVID-19, the whole issue is that the enterprise boundary has completely disappeared. So no longer we can say that we can protect ourselves from firewalls and we can have all of these things. And therefore, again, a small ad for Microsoft. Again, don't get paid for it. When you are on cloud, you are protected by a big cloud rather than you being all inside here at some point. Okay. Now with all of that, which I kind of covered, one of the big topics which I wanted to talk about is also that the cyber paradigm for the enterprise has changed quite dramatically. again, going back to just about 5-7 years ago, and most of the cybersecurity strategy haven't dramatically changed in 5-7 years ago, which is my big problem. We are still trying to do more of the same, and therefore we are not hitting what is the right lever for us to hit. So in the past, we had a three-tier architecture. All of us have seen. So you got some databases, you got some in between operating system, and then we got a presentation layer or application. All of you who have that background will possibly kind of see it. That has all gone to change. It's no longer a three-tier architecture where everything is on a computer. If you look at it, the bottom architecture is no longer your data center. Actually, you have some things on your data center, which you call infrastructure, but a majority of this stuff is actually moving to cloud if it's not already moved. A lot of things is not something which you create your own infrastructure. You just plug into an API and suck data. And of course, is coming the entire distributed ledger technology. Blockchain is just like a nice term for that. Is basically, so your entire infrastructure, which used to be you protect your data center, is not enough, because maybe your estate, your entire technology asset on data center might be less than 50% today. If it is more than 50% today, maybe it will become less than 50% in less than 2 years' time. So that's a completely new architecture which we are not used to seeing in the classical cybersecurity issues. The second one is that we used to see those databases. Now, where are those databases which are all internal to us? This is something which you see on the right side, transactional, operational, all that. But in addition, we've got external data, big data, high velocity data, data coming from apps, data coming from social media, data coming from sensor-driven text. So all of that is a very new kind of stuff happening. A very interesting layer has come in between, which didn't exist earlier, which I call the smart engines layer, which does two things. Either it does a very high-speed data analytics, or it is like an intelligent automation, AI, cognitive areas. Now, these guys have complicated our life a bit too much, because these are non-standard technology from the classical way of the technology which you program. These guys have a smart thing that they can learn on their own. Whereas our entire cybersecurity model is built on to saying that, I know 2 plus 2 is 4, so it's always 4. But these guys say that, maybe 2 plus 2 could be 5 because it's been 5 elsewhere. So this whole concept of self-learning technologies or smart engines, they can get poisoned. I think Jay talked about the algorithmic bias, which comes in because of the quality of data itself. But I'm saying that these days attackers are pushing wrong data so that you make wrong decisions. So this whole concept of poisoning these smart engines is a big problem. Of course, the interface has gone through the biggest change. So it's no longer keyboard and print on a terminal. You see stuff from your mobile, which is again gesture-based control. You got voice-based interfaces. AR, VR is all here. Drones, which are going to be a big area as well. 3D printing, bots, and many, many other kind of smart sensors. And on top of it, you've got then the human layer, which is also now multiplied, which is not just employees who you control. There are people who you don't control, which people who you control partly, like partners, people who you don't control at all, which is your customers and all that. So how do you manage the identity around that? So the point I wanted to make here is that it is very important for us to change the paradigm. Don't look at cybersecurity from the old lens which we've been looking in the past. Thanks, Rekha, for pointing me. I'm going to quickly get to the end now. So the point I want to make here is that if you build your cybersecurity foundation on what you already have, and if it's a wobbling foundation, you won't be able to build a castle. So don't bolt on cybersecurity. The world has changed. So if you believe that you have a cybersecurity strategy which you wrote 2 years ago, time for it to be relooked at it. It has to be completely changed because the entire ecosystem is changing. So it is important not just bolt on. I think you need to do security by design. The concept of security and privacy by design is very different in cloud than it's been on a data center. One of the quick ends that I want to get to is saying that also many times this is again our research on people who go through a cyber attack. How do they go through it? So it typically starts with what I call the denial state. Most people think, and those who've never had a cyber attack in the past, you read in the newspaper, it doesn't happen to me. It happens to the neighbor next door. It'll happen to somebody else. But this is something which people say that it is really important for us to make sure that we stay protected. So the denial state doesn't last too long, and somewhere here, then you start to have an attack. And when you have an attack, I can tell you in today's time, because the cyber attacks are not tiny, they are big, they impact you big time. The CEO typically throws everything in and says that, it's a big issue, the board is talking about it, we will fix it. And what happens when the CEO herself or himself come into the game, what happens is everything gets done, for sure, and possibly everything gets done at speed. But what kicks in at that point in time is what I call the IKEA syndrome. The IKEA syndrome goes like this: would say that if you go back into your house and see a furniture which you bought and a furniture which you built using IKEA, it's likely that you love the furniture which you built using IKEA because you fall in love with your own creation. So a table which you bought can be thrown, but a table which you built can't really be thrown as quickly. So when the CEO herself or himself has built cybersecurity, they say, now this is the best masterpiece we ever built. We will never have a problem again. And that's when another cyber attack happens, and this is start to build into another thing which we call the hard lesson. So typically an enterprise goes through two big cyber attacks before they come into what I call the true leadership in cybersecurity. What you can do is that you can learn from somebody else's mistake, and I would say that if there's one thing which you can do is that you got to really deal with, I'll skip this in the interest of time, there's some of the sections which are interesting but not time, and I will come into here is that clearly what you need to do, because you have the benefit of learning from somebody else, plan a cybersecurity journey. It is not a one-time fix. One person can't throw in the towel and do it. It's a big journey. Plan it for at least 3 years. You need to have investment, but right investment. I do a lot of projects where I say that reduce your cyber spend, then I say increase your cyber spend. Have a good management oversight. And here I really want to invite people with finance professions. So people like Rekha, people like Jay and others, you guys can make a big difference because it is all about a business issue, and therefore you must have a right management oversight. Don't leave it typically to the tech team. And I work a lot with tech team, but I think it's important to have the right top management oversight and the right team to throw in this. Third is that today's time, you can't do everything with hands. So putting more people is a bad idea. You got to have the right intelligence. But more importantly, most companies make another mistake is that they put a lot of things as, now we're good. But in today's time, the cyber attacks will happen, irrespective however good you've invested. So invest as much as you invest in protecting is also detecting and reacting. Because when things go wrong is when you need to get into panic. So yes, build your immunity, but also be ready to hit the hospital when you have to. So strong response. Our research says that only 20% of this budget today is spent on response and 80% on prevention, which is a wrong thing. And the last one is build the right kind of technology, because without technology, you will not be able to do it. So this kind of brings me to end of my talk. I'll be happy to take more questions and some discussion. So back to you, Rekha.
Akhilesh, wonderful presentation. I should say that I learned a lot in the presentation as well. I just want to check if anybody has any thoughts, and I will quickly summarize some of the key points that I've taken. It's great to see consensus that, trust, reputation are very key here, and also to look at cybersecurity as a growth lever rather than just a risk driver, right? That's a meta point that came out. It's a business imperative. And how do we build cyber as a convenience driver? I think that's a very important point that you brought up in terms of how we use it as a convenience driver and getting it inbuilt into the work and the things that we are actually using, right? And a few more things, the multi-year strategy in terms of how we think about it. And it's not just a one-time exercise, because it's an ever-evolving thing. And how we not think about it, this above the line and below the line that you talked about, having a very good balance. Some very great points that you have. I think there's a question in there. Your views on employee training. I know you brought this up in your conversation, that just that is probably not enough. Maybe you can share more light on that.
Sure, I'll be quick so that we can take a couple of more questions. But this is a topic which is again part of my personal research. My take is that what do the employee training, awareness, sensitization try to do? They try to increase the knowledge of people. And my point is that if knowledge translated into action, I would have been 6 kgs lighter. I know for a fact that I should exercise every day. I know for a fact that I shouldn't be eating all chocolates, which I do, but I still do it. So when you tell people what they already know, they actually switch off. And even when they don't know, but they think that this is a great knowledge, it does not translate into action. So what you need to do is that you don't need to spend a lot of money on telling people what to do, that possibly they know, on working towards moving the needle of an organization's culture. So how do you work not on knowledge, but work on behavior is a big issue. So how do you do it? Of course, this is not a subject of just cybersecurity professional, but we in our team, so we work with what we call the people and change business. So cybersecurity professional working with people and change try and bring in saying that what drive change. So there are 2-3 things which we have learned over the last maybe 10 years which drive big change. One is consequence management. What happens when somebody makes a mistake? I think and I will tell you that sometimes when people make mistake in cybersecurity world is pardoned far more than it is pardoned in other words. So imagine when somebody loses an access card versus when somebody loses a password. I'll give you an example. I work with so many organizations which get us to do what to call this spear phishing attack, where we try and sort of craft hacker-like email, like ransomware and others. We send out those emails, and average in India, 25% of the employees actually click on those bad links. What do you do after that? I have been working with companies year after year after year, and that number remained at 25%. And I said, that's not the way to solve it. So we have worked out a method by which how do we make it targeted? How do we increase the value and work on consequence management? Saying, if you do that, then what happens? So there's a 3-stage consequence management program which we run. And in about 9 to 12 months, the culture of the organization changes. So there are various ways by which, so my simple point is that don't stop at just telling people what to do, work on behavior management.
So I think the only thing I would add, Akhilesh, yours is a contrary view, popular view is otherwise, but I think where these two views are intersecting is the entire concept of culture, right? I think you talk about consequence management. I think as far as we as leaders feel comfortable that we are successful in building that culture, I think that's the mute point, I believe. Now the method may vary, and method may vary time to time, context to context, but I think in the end it's the entire culture that we got to build. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe the point is also we can't just rely on employee training, because we need to also think about, there could always be lapses, and how do we deal with that, right? I think that's the point that Akhilesh is making in terms of how we are actually automating and using some of the technologies to take care, knowing that there will always be some lapses. I think that's the meta point there.
Just to kind of close on that one, I've done a very credible research which says that 25% remain 25% if you do training, but if you do this, it came down to about 12%. It's not gone away because organizations also evolve, but there's a very credible control group research we've done on this.
Yep, I agree.
I'm just seeing if there are any other questions there.
So let me ask Akhilesh a question, since I have you here, right? So Akhilesh, you spoke at length about this entire thing to look at cybersecurity more as a strategy. I think same thing was there in one of my thoughts. I also firmly believe in that, because until and unless it is part of organizational business strategy, it may not give us the right outcome, right? So do you have some examples where companies, if you can name them, otherwise you can just provide without naming it, have been very, very successful in translating cybersecurity into a business strategy and made, I think, profits or growth out of it? Yeah, I'm sure
Absolutely. They will. Lots and lots of companies. So here, I know I will talk about 2 types of companies. One which you can see in the public world, and the other which you possibly they don't talk about as much. Because see, the other thing which most evolved enterprises don't talk about cybersecurity as a competitive advantage, even though it may be. It's like saying, you'll never see an airline advertising saying that we are the safest airline in the world. You'll never see it. Because, one, it attracts a lot of attention, and hackers can get really agitated towards these things because they want to prove that you're wrong. And the second is that, this shouldn't be used because this is considered as a hygiene. So you will not see this. But I'll give you an example. And Rekha, pardon me if I'm going to move away a little bit from Microsoft to Google, okay, another favorite company which I work with. Now, if you see, all of you have in your enterprises ways to kind of authenticate when you log into your emails, right? And I would think that they're very strong methods. They're very, very good methods. But Google doesn't use those complex methods, at least at the user end. But Google has taken a strategy saying that, we will let a lot of things happen, but we'll watch. They have a very strong AI algorithm. So every time you log in from a different device, you get an alert saying that, you seem to have logged in. But if they find, and they send this alert to you only when they know it's you. But if it is not you, they will actually block that login also. And they will send you an alert that there was an activity, we think it was not you. So what they've done is that they've taken away the concept of blocking to monitoring and smart notification. Now that has been one reason because of which the entire stickiness of using Gmail increases quite dramatically.
Agreed.
So what I'm saying that, how can a bank today get that? And I'll not name the bank, but there's a bank which is actually working on a passwordless authentication. Saying that, why do we need to do password? There are many ways by which you can authenticate and not just biometric and stuff. So I'm working with this bank in the US where they are actually working on saying that passwords are gone. It's actually it's easier to steal password than your action. How do you? So that's one example of a public thing which you do. Outside of that, there are lots of these things where now cybersecurity has become part of what we call the digital experience. So you don't bring cybersecurity outside, you bring in as part of the customer journey mapping and all of that. That's another example. Third one, which I would say where the company has used to their advantage, this is again a global company. They're in investment management. We worked with them and created a machine learning model of what we call the credential replay attack removal. So basically, how do a lot of these hackers do? They will go, let's say, for example, we all know that all these companies get hacked. So there might be at some point Yahoo got hacked, some point PayPal got hacked. All these user IDs and passwords are there. Now people like us sometimes use the same password everywhere. So what these attackers do is that they pick up username and password. They've got billions of these pawn IDs and they keep trying on every possible site and they get a hit because people use the same password. So we have built a model by which we are saying that this was causing the biggest business issue to them, not because they stole money. Actually, if a user gets to know that a wrong trade was done, even though that trade was $20, it's a huge reputation loss because that person will never come. So we identified that credential replay attack was not a financial loss, but was a reputation loss, and therefore that model got built in. The company invested somewhere around, I think, 750K just to prove the point, saying that this is part of, and then put it as part of the business strategy. And I was part of that project, so I can talk about that. That's another real life example.
Akhilesh, great session. Jay, Akhilesh, I really want to thank you. I think we're almost on time. We have 1 minute to go. I don't know if there's anything else, but really insightful session, I would say. And maybe taking some of the key takeaways. It's not just a CIO thing, but it's a very important business imperative. And I like the point that, how we think about it as a growth strategy and a multi-year strategy. That's super important as we go on this journey. And it's not just COVID time, but how we are thinking about it. It's just one indicator that could last for multiple months, right? The point that you made that it usually by the time we realize it's 190 plus days for people to realize that this has been attacked as well. So very important takeaways. And with that, Pranjal, I would hand it over to you to talk about the next seminar.
Thank you, Rekha. Thank you, Jay, and wonderful to have Akhilesh and all of you to share your thoughts. I was just wondering whether Vivek Anand, you were there. I saw your message. Would you have anything to add, or should we close? Okay, so we will close on this. Thanks again. And, we want to continue the momentum of picking up very, very important issues at the CFO board. The next one will be on financing in the post-COVID world. Mr. Mistry and Mr. Saurabh Jain will speak. And the chair of our executive committee, Mr. Mahalingam, would be also chairing the session. So we look forward to having you all join us again on 14th August. Until then, please share your thoughts and ideas on what else we can pick up at the CFO board. Our board members would be very keen to share their experience with everybody. And also, if you have ideas or other suggestions, moreover, what we would be doing is sending you the presentations, and the recording of this will be on our website. So you would be able to have it as reference as well. So once again, thank you from the CFO board for joining us this morning. Bye.
Hey, thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.